and what gives the animal life.
Right. It's a description of what is the life of the animal.
Exactly. The life of the animal is its blood.
Right.
Okay.
So, unlike our friend, it is not saying.
It is not saying that you are prohibited from eating blood.
Right.
And in fact, this is brought up and thoroughly discussed in the Talmud in Tractate Sanhedrin. You can start around 56a and go through about 59. And this is thoroughly discussed. Where there are, Rashi, by the way, even quotes Rabbi Gamaliel from that era, from that Talmudic section, that says there's a prohibition against eating blood. But Rabbi Gamaliel's prohibition was actually defeated. And the prohibition against eating the blood, the prohibition against only eating the limb of a living animal become an active prohibition.
Halakha.
Right. Now, the qualifying thing is, if we go to Leviticus, by the way, chapter 17 and verse 11, and we are told the life of the flesh is its blood. The life, the nephesh of that animal is its blood. Okay? Once the blood stops circulating, whatever form that you use to kill it, it ceases to be.
For us.
For us, right? So, God gives permission slips. He gives Adam and all the people down to the period of the flood a permission slip to eat a vegetarian diet.
Yeah.
After the flood, then we get permission to eat the living creatures.
To include
the
living creatures.
The eating of the living creatures.
However,
there is a prohibition, just like there was a prohibition against eating all the green herbage. Only herbage that bears seed within itself, and only fruit that has the seed within itself.
Right. So now, when we go to the permission of eating meat,
yes,
then we get another clause, a stipulation of that responsibility that we now have to be able to carry that particular commandment correctly.
Right. And if you read this in Hebrew, by the way, it's only 3 words.
Yeah.
We're reading a lot of words here. But in Hebrew, the real crux of the prohibition is lo, which is no. Don't. This lo is usually no, but we translate as not or don't, right? So it's lo, dam, and dam is blood, right? Ba, nephesh, right? So what he's saying for us is very difficult, right, in some sense, because we have to take that and twist it.
In the context of the rest.
Right, and we have to invert all those words to actually get it readable for us, right? But basically he's saying that we cannot have this animal alive as long as the blood's in it, right? It doesn't mean, by the way, that we have to kill and drain its blood. It just means the only way that we are permitted to eat that animal is in the fact that it has to be dead. That's God's permissionship to humanity. So we can't just walk up to an animal and yank off a piece of flesh and eat it.
Right.
That's the prohibition. Now some people will say, well, that's about being cruel to animals. And it sounds good.
It does reflect respect, because you got to
Absolutely.
realize that the animals have a purpose as well. And we know that from the earlier, from the part of creation, where it says, be fruitful and multiply. That's their main thing, is to survive, be fruitful, and multiply.
Exactly.
So we cannot abuse the permission
Absolutely.
to eat animals in that matter, in that context. So it's basically saying, like you said, the animal has to be dead before you can eat it. And
let's just read a couple of translations while we're at it, and then we'll get into maybe the philosophical side of this prohibition, by the way. So this is New American Standard, by the way. And let's read verses 3 and 4 since we're reading contextually now. This is chapter 9, Genesis, or Bereshit. Every moving thing that is alive shall be food for you. I give all to you as I gave the green plant. Right? Earlier, again. Only you shall not eat flesh with its life.
Again, shall not eat flesh.
With its life.
Now it's describing what type of flesh you cannot eat.
Right. And then we have, if you see it's italicized because these words are added so it'll help our understanding. But let's just leave those italicized out because it should make sense without them, right? Only you shall not eat flesh with its life, its blood. Right? Which means?
The blood is the life of the animal.
Yes.
So you should not eat the meat that's got the blood in it.
Well, it's the fact that you can eat the blood that's in the meat, but you can't eat it.
No, you cannot eat that meat.
Right.
Because that blood is the life.
Exactly. Because as long as the animal is alive. Yeah, the
thing is in most cases, when you kill an animal, it's gonna bleed.
Oh.
And that's what
causes.
That's what's causing. But that's what causes that. That would be what would cause that animal to die.
And by the way,
if you strangle it, however,
yeah,
you know it's
dead. It's dead.
But it was by suffocation.
By suffocation, man. Still, as long as it's dead. The real crux for us as B'nai Noah, this prohibition against eating the limb of a living animal does not instruct us in any way of how to kill an animal. Let's say we should be humane to the animal and kill it in the most humane way possible, right? Now, with B'nai Israel, for example, later on at Mount Sinai, they get a whole instruction of how to kill this animal.
For specific reasons.
And that's their permission slip. Their permission slip is different from our permission slip.
Right.
Their permission slip is to shechter the animal. In other words, there's a cut in the arteries and the gullet, the esophagus, and it must be done in a proper way, and the animal bleeds out. It stands there and bleeds till it becomes unconscious and falls down, but it has to be bled completely out. But the moment that it's shechtered, and if it's done properly, that animal is allowable for them to eat, but it would not be allowable for B'nai Noah to eat it, because the permission slips are totally different. Our permission slip, the animal must be completely dead. Their permission slip is the way that you kill the animal. Our permission slip is it doesn't make any difference how we kill the animal just has to be dead before we consume it. Okay? Now, I'm going to read one more translation, then we'll get into the philosophical aspect of it. This, by the way, is the Living Torah, which is a great translation, by the way. I would recommend people, if this is still around, to get it, by the way. I know it's a little bit expensive, but it's the Living Torah. It's done by a gentleman by the name of Rabbi Ari Kaplan of blessed memory. He died at a very early age. A great writer, a great translator, a great communicator of ideas. And this is his translation. So let's read chapter 9, verse 3 and 4 in his translation. He says, "Every moving thing that lives shall be to you as food, like plant vegetation. I have now given you everything." And see, there's that permission, right? Before, he hasn't given them everything. Now, I have given you everything. That's that permission slip from God. And by the way, if people ate meat before this permission slip was given and granted by God, you know what that was called? Robbery. You have just robbed. Why? Because you don't have permission to eat that. Now we have permission, right? So he says, I have now given you everything, but nevertheless, see, there's that little but again, right? And I tell you that those buts sometimes are very big, you know, when you come down to it. But nevertheless, you may not eat flesh of a creature that is still alive. Now this is Rabbi Ari.
That simplifies it.
That makes it the most simple. It's the most simple translation that you can find, but a very good translation because he is getting down to the crux, to the heart of what the text says, and what the Hebrew text actually does say, right? Okay, now why does man have to have a permission slip? Well, we could say basically because he doesn't want to be a thief, right? So originally, God brings man into the world, and he gives him a dietary permission slip, right? And that dietary permission slip consists of certain types of vegetation. Okay? Now, the question becomes, Well, why wasn't man given the permission to eat animals at that time? Right? That's a big question. And